Okay, so I've removed the intercooler from my smart car. Turns out there's no holes in it. That's great news, but I'm not going to put it back in. I've made a straight pipe for it. So it's just some cobbled together exhaust tubing, copying the same angle as the intercooler piping. You know, I have the air intake temperature sensor, which goes here. Oh, I just mounted it in the exhaust tubing. The opening for the air intake temperature sensor, I just used some steel line. Just a little bit bigger than a 1/2 inch inner diameter. Let's say 5/8 inner diameter steel line. Welded a little tab on either side so it snaps into place. And it fits down there really snug. I'm not worried it's going to be losing any boost out of there. Took a little bit to pressure test the pipe and weld up all the little holes in it. Air is not like, pressurized air is not like exhaust or water. Well, I guess water sprays all over too, but yeah, you got to have some really good welds on there or it's just going to be bubbling out all over the place. And this car doesn't make a whole lot of boost. It makes a little bit, but you know, any little pinhole in there will make a difference for sure. Be just like having a hole in the intercooler. So I pressure tested it and I think I fixed all the little holes. Also, if you're gonna weld up something, make sure you don't have any slag inside. You gotta clean it out really well. Make sure to remove all the slag from there. I went in there with a emery cloth and a screwdriver. You can see there's still a little bit of spackle in there because this is a galvalume exhaust pipe. So when you're welding, the sparks from the welding, they'll really stick into that aluminum coating. Same on the inside there. So I got some little burrs that don't want to come off. They're on there pretty secure. I was trying to scrape them off with a screwdriver. They didn't want to come off, but just to be safe, I sprayed the inside of the pipe with some really good high quality paint and I let it bake a little bit someplace hot. And I'm confident that I'm not going to suck any slag through the engine or any little bits of metal are going to come out of there. But that's the risk when welding up something like this. Better to do it out of aluminum, but aluminum could, well, yeah, aluminum could probably stick a valve open or something too. So that's my intercooler delete. And we'll see how that goes. I was thinking too when I was doing this, you can just like, so here's your EGR valve and then here's the intake for the engine. So if you take your intercooler out, you could just bypass everything directly and come with a pipe right off of the turbocharger and just go like a rubber flexible pipe, like a radiator, a flexible radiator hose. You could just come, a flexible radiator hose at the right length, you could just come off the turbo and then just coil it right into the intake. The only problem is your intake air temperature sensor. I don't know how much that affects anything. It could just tell the fan when to come on. I think it's probably the case because I haven't seen too much difference in the amount of fuel this car uses in the cold or in the hot, or you know. And I've never ever heard this fan come on for the intercooler. Even on the hottest day, it's never come on. I think whoever designed this car designed it for like driving through the desert under load, like carrying 1,000 pounds going up a hill or something. I don't know. The coolant bypass is super large. The coolant bypass on this car is super large, like so much that the thermostat hardly ever opens in this car, you know, especially in the winter time. You know, this car has a really hard time getting warm. And this intercooler, like putting around town, there's not a lot of air coming through here. Like the smart car guys designed this so that there's a vacuum on the back of the car. So when you're driving down the road, the car creates a vacuum at the back and it sucks the air through here. But if you don't get going fast enough, there's no air movement in here. So around town, this intercooler is not doing anything unless the fan comes on. So yeah, I figured this intercooler, I can toss it and I can come up with something better that has better airflow. There's a divider right here, so the air's got to go up one side and then down the other side. And you know, that's not a lot of restriction, but that's definitely a lot more restriction than just a straight through type pipe, even with a 90-degree on there. So anyway, that's my theory, and I'm gonna see how it goes. So I'm gonna install this, I guess what you call it, intake tube, and see how it runs. Also, another reason why I'm leaving the intercooler off is because not having the intercooler here gives a lot of access. You can change out hoses, you can reach in there and grab stuff, you know. It just makes for a little less cramped area in there. If you're going to use the EGR valve body as part of your intake tube, so if you want to use the EGR valve as part of your intake tube, so you want to just copy what the intercooler is here. So pretty much just what I did here in metal, but with a rubber pipe that, you know, turns. You could get a short radiator pipe that would do the same thing. You just have to have you know, either copper tubing or some kind of collar. You shove into your new pipe, and then shove into the pipe on the bottom of the EGR valve, which is this one, and off the turbo, which is this one. So this one goes here. That one goes there. And that one goes there like that. So air comes in that way, goes through the intercooler, and then out and then up into the EGR valve and then into the engine. So what you could do is you could come straight off the turbo, which is 1.25 inches, you know, 1.25 inches outer diameter. So you need a pipe with 1.25 inches inner diameter, and then you just get like, oh, how long is that? So 6, and 4. So a 16-inch pipe. So if you go with a 16-inch pipe, one end 1.25 inches diameter, and then the other end with an 1 5/8 diameter. This one's a little bit bigger. So that side of the intercooler, 1 5/8. So you just go get a copper plumbing spacer, like they have them at Home Depot, just a collar with an 1 5/8 outer diameter, which is probably what it'll be if you find a collar with a 1.5 inch inner diameter. The outside will be 1 5/8. And then you just stick the collar in that end, and then the other end into your new rad hose, and then you have a straight through design, and you can delete your intercooler. So that's one way you could do it also. And then just zip tie your intake air temperature sensor. So just this sensor here, just zip tie it up high, as high as you can, somewhere that's going to get warm or where the air is going to be blowing through. It doesn't actually have to have air blowing through it to read the temperature. I think it just reads the resistance between the wires, and the resistance changes at different temperatures. So if you put it up high, it's probably gonna work fine and you won't notice anything different in the car. So anyway, that's a possibility of something you could do to delete this intercooler. Okay, I got the intake pipe in there. No intercooler in sight. See, it just runs right from the turbo. It's right there, the output is there, and then comes back in underneath the EGR valve. I don't have the intake air temperature sensor plugged in yet because I want to see if the engine light will come on without it. Yeah, engine light stays on. But it's making boosted idle. It never did that before. It says wow, 9 psi at idle. But this gauge probably not that accurate. Holy shit, 11 psi at idle. Seems like it runs pretty well even without that temperature sensor connected. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, it's never done that before. So the conclusion from that is if your car is smoking too much and missing, it's time for a turbo, or at least a turbo rebuild, or you're leaking boost from somewhere. And my intake tube is just starting to get warm. It just feels warm to the touch. You know, I have to see how hot it gets driving down the road, but I suspect there won't be any issues. You know, I'll put a wrap of rubber around it with some electrical tape, just because it's not fastened to anything and it's sitting right on the transmission. I don't want it to be bouncing around all the time and making clanging noises. Yeah, 17.2 psi. It's never went that high before. Oh no! My boot blew out on the car. Okay, so I had a blowout on the highway. My intake tube came off there. I don't know if you can see that. I'm holding the camera there blind, but see how my homemade intake tube came out of the boot there. So what happened was the intake tube blew out of the boot. So I'll show you why it did that in a second. Okay, so here's why it blew off. You see why it blew off? It's because it's a straight run. There's no bulbous end on there. I knew it was like that, but I didn't think the little turbo would make that much pressure. So you see on these ones here, it has the bulbous end. So when you get a hose clamp on there, so when it clamps on the hose and then it pressures up, it'll want to slide off because it has that bulbous end on there. It'll hold it in place. You know, it'll have to, you know, it holds really well. So when it has the end on there, you know, it won't let it slip off the end. So when the hose clamps around there, it won't let it slip off the end. It'll hit that bulbous end. The rubber will dig into there, and the hose clamp will be smaller than that opening. So in order to keep the hose from blowing off here, what I gotta do is create a bulbous end on this pipe. So the outside stays the same, and then maybe a 1/2 inch in, then it gets smaller. And then when I clamp onto it, then it'll have something to hold it from sliding off. So to do that, I found a pin. Yeah, I forgot I already, I rolled the end of it to make it smaller so it goes on the pipe easier. Okay, so I cut the end off a little bit. So I got my pin here. I'm gonna insert that about a 1/2 inch, roughly wherever I want the lip to be. And then I'll just go around and beat it with the hammer. And the outside diameter will stay the same because I got the pin in there, and the inside diameter will shrink a little bit. And it'll take a lot of beating. I'll just have to beat it all the way around. There we go. It's not real pretty, but I think it'll hold the hose on there now. So the hose clamp will clamp right there, and it's gonna hold it on there because it'll have to go past the larger end. There we go. The edge has a little bit of a taper now to it. So the hose should go on pretty easy now. Which way is it? Like this. A little bit easier. Still a little bit tight. Okay, I got the intake all buttoned back up. It shouldn't blow off now. I am gonna back off the turbo a little bit. Okay, there we go. So there's the flapper valve all the way tight. Here's the diaphragm at rest. Okay, so there's it snugged right up. So there's roughly 3 turns to take up that amount of slack for preload. I think I'm gonna go maybe half that, somewhere there. So that should be about a 1.5 turns. So I'll tighten it up another 1.5 turns until it hits that nut, and that'll be about half the preload I put on it originally. So gotta make this car reliably efficient, and performing reliably efficient and performing well. Okay, that's pretty much it there. And my little clip, I knocked it off here somewhere. Don't want those nuts coming loose. There it is. And then just the retaining clip. If you don't have a retaining clip, you can always add one more nut on there. Okay, let's try this again. Gonna go slow. I don't want it to blow out, but I did bring a screwdriver with me this time, so if it does blow out, I can put it back on. Hey, look at that. Yeah, the boost is lower, so that turn and a half worked out good. So right now I got it pinned and it's at 16.6 psi. And before it was at 17 at like half throttle. So hey, that's working good. I'm happy with that. 0.8, 8.4 roughly pounds of boost. Step on it a little bit. Goes up to 15.5 and staying somewhere around there. So yeah, I'm happy with that. It's not over boosting. It's definitely higher than what it was before. Before it was like maxing out around 12, 13 psi. So this turbo is definitely working better. Yeah, it's running good. Performing as it should. It's not over boosting. It's not under boosting. Seems like it's running fine. I drove it 15 minutes. Definitely a different running car. Could be because of the turbo. Could be because there's no restriction on the intake now too. And it's getting a little bit of hot air instead of restricted hot air, because that intercooler didn't really do anything anyway. If the fan was on all the time, maybe it would do something, but with the intercooler just stuck there in the back around town, it's not really doing anything, just causing a restriction. I think that's what I think anyway. I'll do a pull from 40 to 80k and we'll see how high I can get the boost to go. Okay, I got it pinned. Yeah, the flapper valve I think is opening around 17 psi of boost, so that's good. That's right where I wanted it. Yeah, that intake tube is just like room temperature. It's like, it's maybe 20 degrees. It's not even really, it's not even hot. So I was thinking the intake tube might be getting like pretty warm, like an air compressor. But I guess it's not compressing that much heat, so yeah, that intercooler is doing nothing.